Successfully respond to the future. And we have anybody here for public participation? Okay, we'll move on to recognitions and acknowledgments. And congratulations to Taylor Collier, who is the Optimist Club Student of the Month, who's an 8th grader at Bruce Whittier Middle School. And we also will have an update about the Blue Ribbon School, which was Minot's nomination. And Kim isn't here because the administrators, except for Carrie, have been home because of the weather. So we're going to do that presentation.
So I just wanted to give a brief update. We are in the middle of the process for Blue Ribbon School. There's a pretty lengthy application process and work that the principal and the school staff will do, and so they are working on that process. And I'm not exactly sure when when everything is due to be in, but I know that Kim Spencer and her staff are excited about the nomination and also making sure that they get all of the materials they need and answer all the questions and all of that kind of thing. So that's going well, and we'll keep you updated.
Thank you. And under gender adjustment, we're going to move up one of our new business items so that Carrie can kind of get on the road too. And that's program of studies at Fulham Regional High School Science, which is listed under new business. So why don't we say that?
Let's go first.
I think this will be pretty quick.
I just also probably need to do the grand trees, so I'll wait.
Oh, well, we'll do both of them now then.
Okay, so I'm going to hand out to you guys. I hope I have enough copies. I think so. So what I'm providing to you and submitting to you is a proposed revision to the science curriculum at the high school. What you have in front of you is a two-page document, and I presented this to the policy committee and the colors were not there. So this time I remember to get the colors so that it would make sense. I'm going to just talk for a minute. So there are new revised standards. The next generation science standards is what they're called. They've been put out nationally. They are sort of the science version of the Common Core. The state of Maine has adopted the new ELA standards, the new math standards, and is on the cusp of adopting these new science standards. The science department started working hard last year to look at those standards and look at what we had for gaps in our curriculum and what we could stop doing and change, which is always hard for high school teachers to do, to stop doing something. They've done a great job, though, I will say, with a lot of pushing. One of the major changes in these standards is a whole set of standards around engineering. And this is a result of all of the changes that have occurred sort of just in how our world works, right, with the amount of technology that's involved. So they needed to make some revisions to the curriculum that they have been operating under. So what you have in front of you, let's do the back page first. I will talk to you about what the changes are, okay? So if you look at the top, the current practice up here is what the kids have for a requirement now. So we have always had 4 credits of science that kids have had to take. Only 2 of those courses have we ever required, and that's Integrated Science 1 and Integrated Science 2. Over the years, those 2 courses have settled into a physical science, which is sort of chemistry, physics, astronomy, things like that, and life science, which is biology. So Integrated Science 2 is mostly biology, Integrated Science 1 is mostly physical science. So the content's going to change pretty dramatically in Science 1, the 9th grade science class, but it's still going to be physical science. So what you will see is right now we have required Science 1, Science 2, and 2 electives. They are proposing, and I support, that it will go to 3 required courses. Physical science, biology, so it's a renaming of those courses, but broad speaking with changes, the content is relatively similar, and adding chemistry. They at one point thought about adding physics as a requirement, but the standards don't really support that, and so they were able to back away from that. So the 4th credit will be an elective for students. The new proficiency-based diploma requires kids to be enrolled and experiencing these things throughout high school, so it doesn't change anything for our kids. 75% of our kids are already taking chemistry, so it's not a big shift for most of them. We have 2 levels of chemistry, one that's more math heavy and one that's less math heavy. Vast majority of kids take the math chemistry, but the other chemistry is absolutely going to meet all these standards as well. Probably aren't going to need to do a lot of those courses, but have them meet them. They also are proposing a shift in the electives. So currently the electives we offer are astronomy and geology, environmental science, and marine biology. Those are all semester courses. And the year-long courses we offer, anatomy, physiology, advanced bio, physics, intro to chemistry, chemistry, and robotics, in addition to, and then AP biology. So they'd like to shift around those electives. And this is not really in response to the standards, but it's a way of cleaning up what they've been doing for a long time and sort of shifting to what students are interested in and what they think are important. So they'd like to keep astronomy and marine biology, add a course called forensics. Yeah, they're hoping that proves to be super popular, which I think all of us can agree. They've reached out to other schools that have begun offering that, and it becomes wildly popular. And we think, as often as we can offer courses that are rigorous but kids love, we should be doing that. So I think that's going to be the case. The only year-long elective we're going to stop offering is advanced biology. It became very repetitive from Science 2, which is a biology course, and it was a trick. Kids who are doing in the medical fields, nursing fields, need chemistry, and a lot of times anatomy and physiology. That will meet their needs, so we're not going to put any of them at risk. They would like to also add AP chemistry and AP physics. Those things are not on the table for tonight. This is sort of like future requests. So the 2 things that are on the table tonight. Oh, and then on the back, so on the bottom, what you can see are what units kids would be doing. So, if you want to know more about sort of the content of those courses, you can look at that. So we go back to that front page and you see the colors. It gives you the pathways that kids will be able to take when they're here. And so I'm going to just look over your shoulder because it's colored, right? So the yellow ones are all going to be required. So they're going to do that 9th grade physical science, biology, and intro to chemistry. And then they have a pretty wide variety of electives depending on what they want to do once they're gone. I mean, kids who want to do engineering are going to be in calculus, are going to be in physics. Kids who want to do anything in the medical field are going to be in anatomy, physiology, AP bio. So we think, we're still doing what we think kids need for whatever they want to do outside of school. Michelle Smith was going to be here tonight. I told her to stay home. She also submitted the curriculum to Dana Humphrey, who's the dean of the engineering school at UMaine. He actually came and visited us this fall because it turns out we send an inordinate number of engineers to University of Maine for the population that we have in this school. He's been keeping the data, and he was like, we want to know what you guys are doing so well. So he came and visited, so we've got a good connection there. And so she has sent it off for his sort of approval, and he's been able to look over it and give us some feedback as well, so that's been very helpful. So what we're looking for is approval to do 2 things next year. 1, make the shift in the 9th grade science curriculum, and 2, add the elective forensics. And we're asking for approval pending the budget because there's budgetary implications. Science is the most expensive, other than technology, the most expensive thing we do here, right? Because kids cut things up and mix chemicals, and then those things disappear and you've got to replace them. So it's the most expensive curriculum that we offer. So the range of cost for adding forensics and shifting 9th grade primarily comes around the engineering things and the things that kids will be doing with that. So we're anticipating between 8 would be the minimum, 12 would be the maximum, 1,000 in terms of how much that's going to cost for the budget to make that shift. And that's in addition to the regular budget that science needs to just do what it does. So there are budgetary implications that we know that not part of this conversation tonight, but I'd like approval for those 2 changes pending the budget if that suits your needs.
What happens if it don't get approved in the budget? Would it be a federal mandate?
No. Nope. We would continue. They would probably be able to make some shifts just on their own within the budget that we have. They wouldn't be able to probably fully implement the engineering standards that they want to do, but they could do some of it. They could do some of it. Yep.
So of the 10 or 12,000 or so, how much of that would go towards forensics, and how much of it is just to sort of upgrade the other courses?
So forensics, I think they are very interested in having both of these, so they are negotiating left and right. They give me a new budget sheet every week with like a different number, so I'm going to try and remember. Forensics is definitely more expensive because they are looking at a set of textbooks, and that just blows the budget. There's $4,000 right there. And they were looking at 50, they've cut that down to 25. So I think the physical science, I think, is around 5,000 or 6,000. The forensics was closer to 8, something like that.
Okay.
And then the regular request was somewhere around $10,000, which is the budget line in general. So that would be on top of it. I do also want to say that a big chunk would be a one-time cost, right, in terms of books and things like that, and then it would be consumable, so it certainly wouldn't jump the budget every year by $10,000, right? It would be that initial startup and getting science kits and things like that and equipment, and then after that, consumables.
I just want to say, I know that, math and science, right, we all know is kind of the focus, and where kids in the U.S. kind of lag behind a lot, so I think this is really just a great way to try to put our school sort of ahead of it and put our students at an advantage, so.
David,
And I
anything?
am on the budget committee, and I'm saying that, so. I want to make that point.
Would,
No going back then.
That's right. Would anybody like to make a motion? Tina?
I make a motion that we accept this proposal to incorporate this
Pending
pending the budget.
Okay, do we have a second for that?
Second.
A second from Jack.
Well,
Any other questions, discussion? Steve?
yes. What happens, pending the budget, I mean, it's, what difference, if the money doesn't get raised in the budget, what do we go back to, how it was?
So I think, again, one of our discussions with the budget is going to be what are our priorities, and if the budget subsidy, if our subsidy comes in and we need to cut somewhere, probably forensics is going to be the first to go, and again, if the science department has a $10,000 or $12,000 baseline budget just for their regular programs. The new standards haven't been implemented yet, so there'll be no violations. It'll be, what we've been doing all along, with the focus being, that 9th grade class is our first priority. Forensics would be great, and that would be our next step. But again, we've got to take the whole district priorities and try to see which ones come first, and that, I think, is a budget committee and A-team discussion.
Not trying to nickel and dime and pick. So in other words, we're actually voting by voting yes, we're voting to add $12,000 to the budget line.
You're voting to support these two classes if we can support it in the budget process.
Yes.
So the budget
Yeah.
committee may say, we don't have the funds to do either one of these next year based on the subsidy that comes in, or we may say we can do one or we can do both. We'd all like to have both of them.
But that's what it boils down to.
Yes.
Okay.
And
But this is,
One more thing that might help you, so we're in the process of having kids sign up for classes next year. This class, forensics, does not appear in the course sign-up. That has not been offered to students to take because we know that that's not something that you guys have approved. So it's not, kids are signing up for the courses we offer now without changes. And if it changes, then we'll reopen that system and we'll let kids sign up, but not until then. So it would be business as usual.
and this is kind of the first step for them to have that discussion during
Oh, I
budget
think
season.
probably
We
it's a
need-
marvelous idea, but I just wanted to clarify in my mind what both proposals was back to me, and it's how I thought it was.
Mariella?
So regardless of whether we add forensics next year, we would still be changing from the current practice of the integrated sciences and electives to having freshman year physical science, then biology, chemistry, and then an elective.
What we would still be doing is changing the graduation requirements beginning next year's freshmen
Right.
with a new name of science, unless we can't really do what we need to do, and then we may just leave it in place the way that it is. I think we've put nothing out to parents or kids, so there's not any promise that we're breaking. So if we're not able to fully implement, then we may keep it in place the way that it is and change the graduation requirements after that. But these changes would start for next year's freshmen. They would get if you approve, a new 9th grade curriculum.
Right.
They would get an updated and revised 10th grade, not significantly different. They would all have to take chemistry, which most of them do anyway. And then they would have a different set of electives to choose from.
Right, so it's actually a shift in the curriculum as well.
Any other questions?
I wondered if Ainsley wanted to weigh in on what she thinks about this.
I think it's a great idea to expand upon the sciences that we offer.
Great, thanks.
There we go.
Any other questions? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That's unanimous. Okay, do you want to talk about the
Yeah, that one's quick. I come to you every year. This is the annual college visit tour that we do. We send kids out on the 19th, 20th, 21st, I'm thinking.
18th,
18, 19, 20, I can't remember. It's those 2 workshop days we have back to back. And this year, I think they're touring in, oh geez, I'm gonna have to read over here.
Boston area?
Yeah, they're actually gonna stay in sort of, in the past, they've sometimes done a lot of miles, but they're keeping it close to Boston and visiting a series of schools. I'm not sure if the list is finalized yet, but they stay in hotels. We send, it's 1 to 10 for chaperones, a good mix of male and female. The sign-ups will go out soon if you approve. We fund the transportation. The budget pays for the bus, but the kids pay for the rest. And then we'll sponsor a handful of kids from various funds that we try to find for kids who can't pay.
How many, I'm sorry. Go ahead. How many kids usually go? I know it said like 44, but
That's what we aim for. That's the number of seats on the bus and how many hotel rooms we can fit, so it pretty much stays the same every year.
has anybody ever been turned away because we didn't have enough?
Yep.
Yeah?
Yep. We
The
could
waiting
fill
list.
2 buses if we had the money.
Yeah, okay.
Used to be, we've done this for a very long time. It originally started as a grant-funded thing, and then we have slowly shifted the cost to kids. And now we try and find that balance for kids who are going to struggle to pay. They'll pay what they can, and then we'll sometimes have teachers sponsor them. I have a general fund for the activities account that we sometimes use, things like that.
And Carrie, there's a priority list for juniors, I believe?
Yeah, juniors are first.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Anybody have a motion they'd like to make?
Make a motion that we approve the request for the 2015 Grand Tourism.
Second by Missy. Okay, any other discussion? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That's unanimous.
So much.
Thank you, Terry.
Thanks.
Drive safe.
Yeah, be safe.
And so, our presentation, and thank you, Dave, for being patient with us, is on the Tri-Town Education Fund, which Dave has talked to us about before, but would like to give us some updates and sense of where their direction is going.
Yes, thank you, and thank you all for your service. I don't get that often enough. I know how much work it is. A lot of what is happening here is a direct result of my wife telling me what we're going to do. I'm not being sarcastic. It's true. It was her idea. She's done all this stuff I'm going to hand out. She's the secretary. She's not a member of our board, but she is, thanks to her experience on the development staff at Bates College, she knows a lot about this stuff. So she's really been, she likes working in the background, but we wouldn't be anywhere near where we are without Kathy Griffiths. So just want to make that clear. And if she were here now, she'd get red in the face. So, 3 summers ago, summer of 2012, she said we should do this to help our schools because she knows how much the budget can be a political document. And there's a lot of complaints about tax increases and so forth, and we can never do as much as we want. So we met with the guy who preceded you, I'm sorry.
Mike Wilhelm.
Mike Wilhelm, who had done this in Thompson, gotten the community involved, and Mary helped us for a couple of meetings just to think through this, and we decided it was a good idea. I'm going to pass around a few things. This first one is just the grants we've given out so far, which haven't been big, but we're going to get to that in a minute. But Mike got us off in the right direction, and Tina is now a member of our board. And we, a lot sooner than we expected, we got our 501c3, so donations are tax exempt. The IRS moved quickly on that one. And on our board, we have Jack Conway, who used to serve on the high school committee with me and the RSU committee, and he's a lawyer, so he was helpful. We've also got Kathy Fifield, a real estate agent in Mechanic Falls, who has 5 grandchildren in our schools. David McMahon, he's got grandchildren in our schools in Poland, and he has been a CEO of several firms in this area and knows a lot about it, organizing things. And Tina, of course, and Tim Warden, a big real estate agent in this town as well from Minot. He's got grandchildren in the Minot schools. And Poppy Connor Crouch lives in Poland, a good friend of ours, socially, and an expert on working with foundations. So we've got a good board, and we meet about once a month, and everybody's enthusiastic. As you'll see from what I passed around, we did a lot, not a lot, a few hundred here and there, and when it comes to aspirations, getting kids involved in thinking about college, trips and so forth. It was a good start, not a great start. And last May, it occurred to me that I needed to talk to somebody about doing something with a theme to it, a bigger theme. And I went and talked to Tina in May, and she got to the point immediately, we either have to go big or go home. And going big for us is STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and math, which feeds into what Kerry was talking about. On a global basis, we're way behind. And Tina brought up something that hadn't occurred to me, that she wants to get something started in STEM education, hands-on, with Whittier kids. And people who are expert in education understand that kids in 7th and 8th grade start to separate from school. They start to wonder, why am I here? This is a drag. I don't see where it's going to lead. I'm more interested in social interaction, to put it mildly. And this is the time to get their attention, get them thinking about what lies beyond 12th grade if they get that far. Whether it's a trade, vocational school, engineering. And we've just heard we've got some engineering students at Orono. So this is the time to grab these kids with some good projects, hands-on, not just lectures and book reading and multiple choice quizzes and so forth. And Whittier's the place. Whittier can be a pilot for RSU 16. What we've learned there can spread to 6th grade and beyond and upwards to the high school. And 6th grade, from what Tina's been telling me, would be a logical place to, I mean, those kids are already at that age if we get that K-6 teachers involved. So that looks exciting to me because there's something in it for the kids, and there's something in it also for businesses. And I spent 11 years on the school board, and I kept hearing that our schools were not offering, we're sending qualified people in a range of skills to the businesses. We just weren't. Businesses kept saying, you got to do something else, anywhere from writing skills to math skills or something. The businesses weren't satisfied with what the taxpayers were paying for. And so there's a business interest in STEM too, which is where I think we're going to get a lot of our money. So that led to getting this 501c3, and then with Tina's encouragement, we've got 2 excellent Whittier teachers involved, Amy Hediger and Heidi LaChapelle. They both teach science and math, right? And they've got projects. One is involving solar, getting a solar-powered car. It's a 3-week project. It'll happen in the spring. Kids will work in teams and finding a way to get a car to work on solar power. And Heidi LaChapelle is working on something in pH balance in water, which will happen next fall. So they've given us applications. We're meeting with those teachers tomorrow, and it's going to be the launch of something big. And we're going to be a pilot. We're looking at viewing ourselves as a pilot project for many other districts. It's not the kind of thing that will be restricted to here. We'll start with businesses at RSU, but I can see where businesses in the LA area would be interested in helping us, being part of a donor society. And those businessmen and women would come to visit our school as well to show kids why it's important. be conversant with what STEM is all about. So there's all sorts of possibilities here. I want to make sure I haven't missed anything. We will also have money available for non-STEM projects as they develop. I've been talking to Mary and Tina about other ecology areas, but we'll see where that goes. I think that's about it. I don't like long meetings. Some of you might remember that I push things a bit. Well, I don't want to make this a long discussion. Do you have any questions? I was hoping Wynn would be here. It's hard to get things in that paper anymore, but we'll do some publicity on this once we start handing out money. Any questions about that?
Is your biggest challenge then just building that fund, getting that money so that you can?
Yeah, and we've already got, thanks to some payroll deductions, we've already got about 2,500, and we've given out a couple thousand. So I think the way to go is to go to businesses first, and then we can go to the foundations and show them we've got community support, which foundations are going to expect. We've also done a couple fundraisers. We did a foot race and a dinner last fall, or 2 falls ago. So the community support is already established for the donor organizations. They'd be impressed by the fact that we're not going to them empty-handed. So it looks like strong community support, which that doesn't surprise me at all, knowing these 3 towns. So it's no longer about just avoiding tax increases. It's about helping the kids get ready for careers and getting businesses involved in our schools. Any questions about that? Yes, Jack.
Not question, but comment. Number one, thank you
Yeah.
for what you're doing. I know from another, having been taught by another former school board member, Carl Beckett, in 6th grade, that some of those things, the hands-on things that you're talking about, are the more memorable things, the hook that is in and focused. So I think that's an absolutely great idea.
Thank you. I don't know much about educating. Any education I've done has been in college and adults, so I know what my kids are like in middle school. It was a challenge. They were not exactly brilliant scholars, and they had other interests. So this is the kind of thing that would have grabbed at least one of them who leans that way. So I owe it to Tina to come up with this idea, and we've got great teachers at Whittier. Whittier has been a huge success. Even the people at Mechanic Falls who hated giving up 7-8, right? You're right, exactly. 7-8, they hated giving up 7-8 at Elm Street. Is that right? Yep. They love it. So that's a wonderful institution, and I give Aisha, right? Aisha and Sean a lot of credit for that. This is what we're handing out to businesses. Again, Kathy was the designer. I just edited a few things. So, any more questions?
We certainly want to express our appreciation, and please share that with your committee.
I will.
You've done a lot of good work already, and it looks like there's a lot more to come in the future. Thank
It's all about money.
you. Thank you.
There's money out there. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Steve.
Our next agenda item is to approve the regular meeting minutes of January 12th. Motion, Mariella, and Julie second. When I looked at them, the only thing that I saw was where it talked about old business and it talked about the budget committee members. It had Colleen listed as in mine, and I think it is just Bernice Frazier this year, isn't it? Or is Colleen able to?
Colleen's able. I
Okay.
called Colleen, and what she said was that she was planning on it, and that Bernice is selected by the selectmen, just from the town in general, but they always have a budget committee member as well, and that's why it was her and Dan Callahan last year. Dan was the selectmen's choice, and then Colleen was the budget committee's choice,
So that's not a mistake then, and
I
glad
meant
that.
to tell you, but I made a call
Okay,
to
good.
check because she had been on the committee last year.
Good, thank you. Anybody else have any questions or see anything? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the minutes? Anyone Opposed? Unanimous? Oh, we have one abstention.
Two.
Oh, down two. Scott, let's see that. Okay, we have old business.
How about financial statement?
I always skip that one for some reason. Acceptance of the financial statement, approved the financial statement for January 2015.
So moved.
Second by Jen. And I'm sure that we have questions, but Tina has some things she wants to say.
So as I looked through the financials, all of the schools are at about the same place. They should be about .42 right now. We have Elm Street at .46, MCS at .46, PRHS at .46, and then PCS at .45, and Bruce Whittier at .47. So you can see our spending habits are pretty consistent across the district. The good thing is there is some cost savings there. We're ahead of our budget plans, and that's a good thing because I have just frozen the budget. And there's just a few things I wanted to point out to you that I thought might be of interest. If you'll look on page 8, we are in the Elm Street budget. I wasn't sure if we had talked about this before, but I didn't think we had in the ed tech salary line about a quarter of the way down the page is a $13,000 salary line, and it hasn't been spent at all. I was able to put that in grant money, so that's going to be a true savings. And the same thing with the benefits. About 3 lines down, that hasn't been expended at all. So again, a savings there because I was able to move that into grant money. That was good. On Bruce Whittier's section on page 15, you're going to notice that the substitute line is overrun already. We had the same problem last year, and we put additional money in there because that was just underfunded for quite a while. They have a young staff, and so they're having children, and the subline is being eaten up by that need for those longer-term subs. So there will be a recommendation again to increase that line a little bit in our budget to make sure we have enough in there to appropriately fund the subs that are needed.
Can I ask you a question on that same page?
Yeah.
It looks like postage. You had like $2,000 in postage, and none of it looks like none has been spent. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's accurate. Well, it's not accurate, but it's the high school, they do all of their postage through the high school, and at the end of the year, the high school bills them.
Oh, okay.
So they're actually spending it, but you're seeing it come out of the high school line until the end, so it balances out eventually. If you'll go to page 18, we're in Poland Regional High School's lines. About 3/4 of the way down, you're going to see the secondary principal and assistant principal line. It says .38. It's showing that that's overexpended. You'll notice that for all of the administrators, there's when we did the back pay after contracts were made, it pulled a second pay run into ADS, and it pulled everybody, even though the administrators didn't get an additional pay. So that's just a glitch in the system, and they're working to correct it. So they haven't been paid more than they need to, and it's just showing that they have. So if you look through it, almost I think every administrator, you'll see that those lines look like there's a problem there, but there is not. On page 27, your central office expenses. And you will notice that our temporary office staff salary, that is for sub in case of, somebody's out. We had $500 budgeted there, but to cover the long-term sub that we had, cost a total of $3,636. So about $3,000 of unanticipated costs, but it was well worth it. Tracy did an excellent job and kept us going in the 5 or 6 weeks that Lauren was out, so that was a big help. And it did help that we had a 2-week vacation because she didn't work during the vacation. She didn't work on snow days, so we saved some money there. But you will see that we will put in some sub money in those lines in the future because we have well, Lauren, Carol, Wendy, and Lori, we couldn't do without a replacement for a sub, so having at least $3,000 or $4,000 in that line is important for emergency situations like we had this year. One of the big things you've heard about is our out-of-district costs for special ed. If you'll look on page 28, you're going to see the tuition paid to educational services line. That's where the $316,000 budgeted is. It says 0.35, but that actually looks better than it is because there's some outstanding bills that haven't been paid yet. And so I spoke with Wendy and with Holly, and we budgeted out the students that we have in out-of-district placement now and how much it's going to cost us for the rest of the year. And we have $110,000 left in that line, and the cost, if it stays the same, nobody move in and nobody move out, is $316,000. So our next step is that now Wendy has to find where we can find $210,000 that's not budgeted.
So that's gonna make a $500,000 in that line by the time we're done?
Yeah, it's really shocking. We had 6 students move in the last year that needed out-of-district placement. And so you have no way of anticipating something like that. And you can't not do it. We don't have the programming to service a really severely troubled student.
So is that shortfall the reason that you're freezing the budget?
Yes. So right now, well, Wendy's going through a process to find in special ed lines how much we can recover from their lines. Like we have some ed techs that we haven't filled this year, not because we're not trying, but there'll be some savings there. We also have some supplies that haven't been purchased, they won't be. And then once we know that number, we'll know how much we have to find from the general budget. We have about, if you include the special ed and the general budget, about $100,000 savings in salaries overall because of hiring some less expensive teachers and then not hiring in some other positions. So, you know, if we know we can take that salary money, we still have the issue of finding the other $100,000. And so the administrators know we have a freeze going on, and depending on what we come up with, once Wendy does the analysis and we look for all of the money that's not essential, then we will decide how hard the freeze is. Right now, we're trying to have it be what I would call a soft freeze. We say essential costs will go through, so kids would go to Camp Kiev in 8th grade. If there is, supplies that are pretty essential for a program, go through. We have the librarian wants to, buy some books that is specifically meet the needs of the National History Day. I'm going to let those go through because it's a specific program and we want them to have the appropriate stuff for it. But if we are concerned about where we're going to find the money, it could be a harder freeze, and I'll keep you updated. We'll know more. She's in the middle of working on that right now.
We
Yes.
shouldn't have to go back to the towns and ask for more money?
No, we are not anticipating that. And again, if we have more kids move in, it could be a problem. The other piece of this is that projection is if those kids attend school every day. So and that usually doesn't happen. So if a child were out sick or something, that doesn't cost us. But again, this is our projection right now, and we need to be keeping a really close eye on it and making sure we don't have to go back to taxpayers for more money.
Which could, I hope it doesn't, but it could happen.
It could happen. I'm not anticipating that right now. We're going to work hard at saving. We're going to work hard at reducing costs in other areas.
We don't pay for them when they're sick and stuff to go to school. What about like the snow days and stuff like that, since we've had so many of those?
If they don't attend school, we don't get billed for them. We're billed for each day that they're there, for their services. The other thing I thought I would point out to you on that same page is if you'll look about a little less than halfway down the page, contracted services eligible for subsidy. That's what we call seed money. So when a student goes to out-of-district placement and they get services that can be billed for reimbursement. And so we've put in, and then we get billed for that. we put in $50,000. That's a guess. We keep watching the 279s to see if there's any adjustments for the seed money to see is our projection close or not. We don't know that yet. So we're watching that line as well, hoping the $50,000 is going to be about what is expected. I think last year it was $40,000, and then the year before that it was maybe $69,000. So we think we've made a pretty good estimate for $50,000 for this year. But if that came in lower, that would help us a little bit as well. And then, let's see, I just had one more flag here. You're going to hear us talking in a little bit about the mechanic and the money that's been saved having the additional mechanic. And if you'll look on page 34, purchase, repairs, and maintenance of services, you can see that we've spent about $32,000 so far, but recently only $1,184. Pretty much the only things that are going out of district now are things that are under warranty and are being paid for by the warranty. So we have $40,000 there that we're looking to move to the additional mechanic time, because it's saving us a lot of money not to have them going out. So I just thought I'd point that out to you because that will come up shortly in another part of the agenda.
Did our other bus show up?
I don't know that.
Supposed to show up Friday. is what
Friday
it
the
says.
13th.
Oh, does it say Friday the 13th?
Yeah. Tina, I got two questions, just one real quick. One on page 4 and then one on page 20. The page 4 one just says tuition to charter school, and it says we paid out almost $7,000, but it wasn't anything budgeted, obviously. But I didn't see that line on any other school.
It is, this is, 90 is the 90 is Minot, so that was an unexpected cost, but if you look at PCS, we had
Okay.
like 100 and something thousand budgeted to charter school.
Okay.
Elm Street School, I'm trying to see, if those are actually in each school. I believe we
Okay.
have somebody from Elm
I may
Street
have
as
just
well.
missed it then, that's fine.
We don't have anyone from Bruce Whittier, and we don't have anyone from the high
From the high
school.
school.
But I think all 3 elementary schools have somebody going.
Okay.
And the money that we have at Poland covers Minot.
Okay.
Because we had less go from Poland and then the unexpected one from Minot.
And Elm Street has almost 15,000, of
Yeah.
which about 7's been spent.
Okay, I missed that, so thank you.
Yeah.
And then the other one was page 20, it just says tuition paid to other SAUs, but we're already in the negative there. Is that going to be a continuation where tuition for the remainder of the year has to be paid? And it's like 4th line down on page 20.
Yeah. So.
It's like we're already 600 in the hole, but do we have to continue to pay tuition for the remainder of the year?
No, I believe that's paid out.
Okay, so that was it, okay. That's it.
Yeah, I asked maybe last month before, how many students do we have with tuition and out? When we become an RSU, a lot of kids are going other places, but over time, that is supposed to be all phased out.
Yeah.
Is there any students left?
Yes, we have one still at Hebron, and the last one, there's nobody else that will come
Okay.
along after this. This
Yeah.
is the end of
Well,
that.
that was a sibling to one that's already
Yes.
gone?
And we have one at Gould, and I believe this is the last year for the Gould one as well.
Okay, thank you.
I just had a couple questions. One is the fuel lines on every school looks like we're really low.
They've encumbered all of the fuel costs for the year, and they did that before winter even started to try to make sure that money was,
It was already there.
there and ready for when the bills show up. So with the fuel costs, we locked in this year, but we anticipate a savings.
Yeah, that's what I was
Just
wondering.
because we locked in at a pretty good price. I think Kim said it was a savings of $20,000 over the whole district.
Oh, good.
So, and again, it will depend on how cold it is and how much we're using and whether the boiler's working here at the high school or not, but we do encumber that all, so it's deceptive. We're not out of money.
Okay, and then the other was just, I noticed this was another theme with a lot of the schools, was the music for the travel that was allocated. And it wasn't a lot of money, but it just seems like we haven't used any of it for any of the districts. So it made me wonder about the music program and Is there a reason?
There's a good chance if that none has been spent out, that the person hasn't submitted their mileage sheet. So if you know it's $200 in a year, it's probably, $10 a week, and they probably just track it each time they go and submit it at the end of the year.
Okay, I just wondered if there was anything with the music program that we weren't aware of, but that's,
Yeah. Usually if it's a small amount, they wait until it's a
Right.
check that's worth requesting.
yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the financial statement? That's unanimous. And moving on to old business, and at our last meeting, there were some questions that came up around the audit process. So Tina just wanted to talk a little bit about that and address some of those.
So we can do the audit process however the board would like to, and I know, I think Aaron, no, maybe it was Scott that spoke up at the last meeting, saying that there was a question about whether the auditor should present to the finance committee, and then maybe that finance committee come and present to the board, or whether if you want the packet ahead of time, the booklet ahead of time. So I didn't want to let the conversation end without knowing what the board wanted for a process. My recommendation is that we have the auditor come to the full board, because they know the most about the report, and I think it's important that every board member hear it. So I'm happy to give if you want to keep it that way, I would recommend that. But if you want the booklets ahead of time, that's easy to do. What we stopped doing that back when Mike was here, because what I remember happening is the booklets go out and then people forget them on the day that we have the audit report. And then the other piece is there's a lot of confusion and questions that people have because they're looking at it before they've gotten any direction on how to read it. The idea of starting from the back isn't something that's kind of intuitive for people. And so the auditor does that well. So my recommendation would be, for anybody who wants it ahead of time, we're glad to make sure the board has the book ahead of time, that we still have it here for the whole board to hear, but then any questions that come up, we write down and we bring back to, or people send us emails or questions that we can bring them back to the next meeting to answer any questions. Only because I anticipate if we do it to just a small committee, we're going to get here, people who haven't seen the presentation are going to have questions that we have a difficult time answering.
Is there any possibility the auditor has that in an electronic version, that you could still do the entire presentation? Because I agree with you, we all need to hear the presentation. But if the auditor has it in electronic format, you could have them send that out to the board and be available for everybody. That way people could look through it.
Yeah.
And our other option is, if he doesn't, we scan it and email it to you.
And I think that was Scott's original concern, was he didn't have enough time to digest it and formulate any questions to be able to ask any intelligent information. And it seemed almost as if the presenter was presenting what he wanted us to hear, but we didn't have time to go into other pages or ask other questions. So I agree with the electronic. I personally, I like the idea of me emailing and submitting maybe to the two of you.
Yes.
Here were some of the questions that I'd like touched upon when he comes and presents. Just to be able to speed the process, make it a bit more refined. That's just a suggestion. But I do echo Scott and Jack here saying I want it beforehand, just so I can be familiarized with it.
And so the other piece of that is that once the auditor does their proposal and people go home and can look at it with a fresh set of eyes, like, oh, now I understand how to look at this, you may have additional questions, and maybe having this come up in old business again to discuss any additional questions that you come up with, I think, might be.
I just don't want to pay him again to come back out
Right.
here and answer those questions.
Right, I think, so for me, I have a full presentation before you get the full presentation, so I've not only heard it once, but had opportunity to ask questions and then hear it again. So I think we would be able to answer the questions, especially if we knew them ahead of time, so if I had any confusion, I could get something verified by Wendy, that we would be able to answer follow-up questions the next month, or even at the next finance committee meeting if people had them. But I wanted to make sure if you wanted to change it to the finance committee, that I would be prepared to do that and kind of have the process in place next year, so we didn't forget and then have the same conversation again. So I don't know if that's.
So I guess I'm seeing people agree that the full board would like to get it, that we would like to get it in email ahead of time, or if not.
The book.
The book ahead of time, so that we have time to review it and formulate our questions.
Could you just put it in one of the documents in first class, rather than emailing it?
Absolutely. Yes.
That would be a huge document.
Yeah. Yeah, we could definitely post it. I'm assuming we can get electronic version, but if not, it would be easy to do a PDF of, scan it, do a PDF of it, and have the pages easy to filter through. So I will work on that and make sure I ask that question about getting electronic copy for next year.
And that way, nobody has to come to the meeting without the booklet, and then
Yes.
the meetings have to begin.
Yes.
Right.
That sounds great. Thank you. Yes. Oh, that would be a joy.
It'd be awfully small, but.
Okay, under new business, we've taken care of some of it, so we are down to approving a teacher nomination, our speech and language pathologist at Elm Street.
Yes, we are very excited. We have been contracting out for speech and language to get by, and we now have an applicant and an employee that will fill that role full-time for us. And he has about maybe 10 years of experience as a speech-language pathologist. So we're excited to have him on board and start working with our students in a more seamless way for us.
Do we have a motion for approval? Aaron, and second? Second from Mariella. Any other questions? I'll just say I know how difficult it is to fill a position like this, and also how expensive it is to contract it out. So I think we're really lucky to have a good, strong candidate.
I just, we didn't get any information though, right? Or did I miss it?
Yeah, it's in your packet.
It's on the back.
Oh, I missed it, I guess.
I just put it at the bottom.
The grand, the college trips.
Oh,
It's on the back of that.
Side of that.
That's also. Oh, that's our sheet.
Yeah, it's on the
Yeah.
back of this.
They're stapled together.
Yes.
Anybody have?
No? Tina can't find it.
I know I saw.
I can, yeah, I was going to say, I can send it to
Oh,
you.
okay. Thanks. Oh my God, I'll do it. All right.
Okay. I'll give you a minute to take a look at it. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That was unanimous. And, Tina had mentioned about the, in the transportation budget, the difference in terms of the, what we're paying to send our buses out, which sort of relates to our next item, which is approving a mechanic position, so.
So Tom has been out plowing many, many hours, and I sent him home to sleep tonight. So I'm going to do the presentation for you. And those of you who are on the Transportation Committee heard Tom's proposal, so if I leave anything out, let me know or add to it. So the request is to add an additional 20 hours to the current part-time position to make it full-time. The cost to do so for the remainder of the FY15 year would be $2,959, so basically $3,000 above what we already had in the salary line. So, as you know, I shared when we were doing the financials that we have $40,000 left in the cost for repairs line, so we would transfer the $3,000 into the salary line and have that fully covered. I'm not sure if the person would take benefits or not, but Tom had an employee who he thought was taking benefits, so he has an additional, he has additional money in his benefit line that could cover the cost of benefits should the new full-time mechanic or the full-time mechanic decide to take benefits. So again, that's already budgeted. And for the remainder of FY15, the total cost would be $16,528. And again, next year, we're not looking that this would be any increase to the budget because he will reduce the money that was put in the repairs line because we are being able to do it much cheaper by keeping those repairs in district. And Tom shared a few examples. I don't know if you have this in your packet at all or not. Okay. He shared a few examples with us. So, you know, all service doors rebuilt. O'Connor's quote was $754. RSU's cost was $218. New storage compartment. O'Connor's quote was $1,154. It ended up costing us $305 to do the same job.
There was a motor rebuilt on there too, that was pretty significant. I'm not sure if you want to point that out.
Engine repair cracked head. O'Connor's quote was $9,566, and we did it for $1,582.
Yeah.
So a lot of the quotes, like storage compartment rebuilt, is, you know, a third of the cost when we do it in district. So it's really proven to be very cost-effective for us, and the town has agreed to let us use the second bay on Fridays, which has been a great help because we can do bigger projects. We can have both mechanics there working side by side, and they can stop and help each other with, you know, some big jobs. So it's really helping our efficiency with having 2 bays on Fridays as well. So there are a lot of benefits here to this, and we're seeing a savings in the work so far. As you can see, we had spent, you know, 30-something thousand in the first half of the year, and we've, you know, spent the first quarter of the year, hardly spent any since the new mechanic came on.
Okay, do we have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, we have a second, Maren? Questions?
Now, will that mechanic go to full-time, or do we have to
Yes.
post it, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion unanimous?
Can I just ask a question, kind of like with what Missy was just saying? Legally, do we have to post it?
We may, I'll have to look.
I just wouldn't want us to, because I know a lot of places, you just have to post it like one day or something, but.
So if they're in the, I have to look to see if the mechanic is in the bus agreement. If they are, we have to post for, I think, 5 days is in that agreement. I just can't remember if the mechanic is in there. And we will certainly follow all hiring agreements. So, you know, it depends on the agreement, how long, you know, our teachers is different than our ed techs, which is different than the bus agreement, so.
Okay, and the next one is snow plowing cost, which have been a little.
So, one of the things that's been come apparent this year is we are not properly funding or even documenting the costs for snow plowing. We have, the only snow plowing budget we have is a $5,000 stipend for one employee. And as you know, we have many parking lots, and we do repair the trucks if they need to be repaired and that kind of thing. They're in a basic repair line, but there's no evidence anywhere that we have snowplow costs or even snow removal costs. So in normal winters where you have a storm every 3 weeks and you get, 36 inches of snow in a year, we've been able to get by. And now what's happening this year is that we have Tom, who has a full-time director's job, Gary, who has a full-time custodial and supervisor job, Tony, full-time custodial and supervisor job, Lee, who's a bus driver and does some mechanic work for us, but a full-time job who does some plowing when we're desperate, and Rich, who does some snow plowing for us from PCS, a custodian, when we're desperate. So we have some full-time people who have, in particular, are salaried people. We have 2 salaried people who get no extra money and have probably, in a course of 2 weeks, put in 70 hours to do that job. We're not compensating them properly. They're not sleeping. We don't have a number of subs in the custodian line. We've talked about that before. We have 1 sub in the whole district, so they don't feel like they can, if they've stayed up all night, that they can stay home the next day, which is what I've been trying to send them home, and they say there's nobody here to do the work, and I'm talking to them about, safety and saying you need to go home and get some rest, and if the rooms aren't cleaned quite the way they usually are, that's, a compromise we're going to make. But the other day, driving by Poland Community School, and the egress windows were totally blocked with snowdrift. And we can't do that. You have to have 2 exits for every room, and the egress window is an exit because there's only 1 door. So we said we've got to get that cleaned out. And you need a bucket loader for that. So the first challenge is we have no budget lines to pay the folks that are doing all of the work. Plus, they already have full-time jobs, so we don't really necessarily want them doing that work. We need Tom being the transportation director, and we need Gary being the custodian supervisor, because that's what they are paid to do. So there's going to be, you'll see this in the budget next year, and we want to give you a heads up. I don't have a solution for this year because we don't have money. And we're just going to do the best we can. Our staff are amazing, and they're doing the best they can. But I'm struggling because it doesn't seem right, and I don't know what else to do. And I just wanted the board to know that there has to be a big change somewhere along the line.
The other thing is that, like, the windows over to Poland, we had to do that. We had to hire a bucket loader because that had to get done. So there are some costs that we're going to have to incur because there are safety issues.
Have we ever looked at, contracting out for snow plowing? Because I thought we might have talked about it at one point.
So Gary is getting a quote for contracting out the high school.
Okay.
And we had a meeting with the town managers, Mary and I, both in attendance on Friday, was it? And we proposed back to them, is there any help that each town could give for the elementary school, while if we could contract out for the high school. Contracting out is very expensive, and it's going to be a huge increase in our budget to contract out. And what John Hawley said was, so we kind of acknowledge that they have a tight budget too, and they're in the same situation we are. Towns are running at the end of their snow plowing lines already, and they certainly didn't plan on helping the district out this year, but Mary kind of really said we're talking long-term as well. So instead of contracting out and having, John was saying it makes sense if the towns can help out, even if they have to hire an additional staff member, they have the equipment that's designed to do it. And they would do it for cost because it's they're going out just like they would, and they pay their staff, whereas a contract, they're making a profit on the cost. They have a businessman that is looking to bring in money for running a business. So they agreed to go back and speak with their selectmen about what the future might look like, and if there's any, I know Minot already goes into the parking lot and pushes back the banks for us. At least once or twice a year, I think, is what Tom was saying.
Before the town meeting, they always do,
yeah. And so, so part of this conversation is, and I think the conversation in the past was that, for Poland to take on the high school, that has a big parking lot plus a student parking lot, plus you'd have PCS and you'd have central office. Might be too much, but if they just helped us with the elementary schools, maybe the contract is for the high school, which is, services all towns. And that's kind of where we are right now, knowing that we still have some equipment that we could, if we just get people to do the basics, we can do the touching up, and we do the central office, we can use our staff, on the minor things, but not swamp them with the full responsibility.
I said, Mechanic Falls always, before consolidation, took care of Elm Street
Right.
School. That was a part of the whole consolidation. We became our own entity, and that was, we never did this years ago. It was kind of that, when we consolidated,
Yes.
and then to save money, because we had no money and budgets, and that's when they kind of started doing that. But it didn't
Right.
always used to be like this.
Right.
We did talk about this a year or two ago, and I know at that time, of course, we didn't have a winter like we're having now, and but at that time, I got the impression that the stipend line was sort of advantageous to some of the folks, and they really enjoyed sort of being able to have that opportunity to earn that as part of the staff that we already had. And at that time, really felt from the transportation department that they were not looking to contract. And I can tell you, so I think you're right. I think this is an opportunity to kind of look at that differently, because I agree with you. I don't think people, they're already doing a full-time job. They can't do kind of everything. But I know it's a bone of contention with some of the towns, like I know particularly in Minot. This was discussed previously as well, and could never understand why, when we became an RSU, that we didn't sort of engage the towns to help with clearing these elementary schools that they had always done before. And that all of a sudden changed with the RSU, is my understanding from previous discussions.
We
So
fought
they-
with Minot
yeah.
for 20 years before the RSU. They didn't want to do it, then they do it, then they wouldn't do it. It's been one can of worms since I've been on.
But I think there's opportunity, I guess.
Well, we did have a discussion, because it was prompted, once we became an RSU, what the cost would be as far as for sanding and to continue to do the winter clearing and so forth. But I think at that time, what we got was some information back that because of all the budgetary restrictions at the town level as well, that they didn't have the staff necessary to be able to handle all of that. And I think we even also talked cost.
Yeah, they wanted to
with
bill us,
some
I
of them,
think, at
and
one
they would have
point.
billed us, and I think the cost was a little prohibitive for us as well, from my recollection.
Did you want to add anything about the meeting?
I just think, we've started the discussion, and I think, John has been part of those discussions along the way, so I think we need to just keep seeing if we can find some middle ground, and I think looking at the high school maybe differently too,
Right.
because
That
of the space that needs to be taken care of and the job that it is, but if we could just get some help with the elementary schools, that would be.
And the other piece that I wanted to bring up is Mariella's husband, Rick Jones, has been helping us. He's the one that came in and got the egress windows cleaned out. And Mariella, is this the time you want me to talk about it?
I
So-
wanted to let everyone know that, and they contacted him because they were in a bind, needed someone that could come in with a loader. So he's given them a discounted rate with a loader and the plow truck, and I know they've been here at least 30 hours with he was at PCS last night until 1 o'clock in the morning, cleaning out those egress windows, and at least 30 hours with a loader and 10 hours or so with an additional plow truck.
So Mariella called me because she was worried about the conflict of interest thing, but I approved it because of the safety concern. We couldn't have kids in those rooms without an escape route, because we were in violation. So I called Mary and asked her if she agreed with my decision. She did. Again, we're in a bind because we have nobody contracted to do this, and they're all busy. So we feel very grateful that Rick agreed to do it.
Find a plow guy right now.
No. So we're really grateful that Rick agreed to do it, and, I've made it clear to Mariella that I don't expect our people to call him and expect him to do things for free because he's connected with the school district. And so I want, if we're asking him to do something because we need the help, it's important that we're billing his company. And so...
We're billing him?
Okay, let's rephrase that. We're paying him when he bills us, and then he bills us, so. Yes.
So I think, and so I just want to make sure that everyone is aware of that, because, but on the other hand, he comes when they need him. So that's, but in terms of and we had this discussion at our last committee meeting, and I think I went around to all the town managers 3 or 4 years ago about this, but I think if we put it forth that we would contract out the high school, because all 3 towns go to the high school, so if it's in the budget, then that way it's proportioned like all the other items are in the budget. And then if the towns could, which they probably would need a year's heads up, go back to having the staff and the equipment that they could do the elementary schools, which are just for their kids,
Right.
then, then maybe that would be the most efficient way that we could do it.
And I did talk to, Arlen and I have emailed a little bit, he wasn't at the meeting, but the way we presented it is that if we can't get the town's support because they don't have the staff or the equipment to add, more plowing, that we're going to have to budget for it. And so one of us will budget for it, and one budget will go up or the other. But they already have the appropriate equipment, so for us, we've got these small trucks, they're breaking down and being repaired over and over and over again because they can't handle the work of, 30 hours at a time or 38 hours at a time. So that's part of I don't, I've told the managers, we're not trying to coerce them into something, we're trying to make a cost-saving venture between the town and us that will benefit the taxpayers. And so that's the bigger picture of this. And we'll certainly understand and budget if we have to in our own budget to take care of it. But, a bigger plow truck, that we're talking huge costs, and a contracting out is going to be, tens of thousands of dollars. So, that's the challenge ahead of us.
So just to clarify, I understand what you're talking about for the high school, but for the towns themselves, are you saying that we would still pay them at cost? Or you're saying the town would just absorb the cost and we wouldn't? See, I think
instead
that
of
would
our
be an
budget
issue.
going up, we wouldn't have it in our budget, they'd have it in theirs. And it doesn't matter it still comes out of the taxpayer's pocket exactly the same.
You pay us and
Right.
we pay you back. Or
Right.
Right.
So it doesn't make sense for us to be paying the town to do something because our money comes out of the same pocket.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but I can see that
Yeah.
one of the issues could be that, it's the land is owned by the school, it's part of the school district, and you have a budget, that's a school budget, and so it really should come out of that budget as opposed to coming out of the town budget. So not that they couldn't do it for cost and we could pay them maybe, to do that. I'm just saying that may be something to consider, that I could see a little pushback on that.
The other issue from that is capacity, that they don't really have the capacity in terms of staffing
Right.
to do it. And I think there's reality to that. So, I think we're at a beginning spot in terms of discussion and trying to find something that works better than what we're currently doing.
If there is a plow guy that's looking for work, would you like their name? I can give it to you after.
Yeah, the problem is we don't have any money.
to pay them.
So if he's free, if he's free, that's great. No. It wouldn't hurt for us to have a name if we, again, have a lot of snowstorms and we're desperate. We might have to find some, but right now, we have our own employees working for nothing on top of their job. So when Tina talks about the stipend, we only have one stipend.
No, I understand.
So
I don't know if
it's-
it was different in the
Well, I
past,
think
but that
some of
was,
those people
we did
moved
discuss that.
from salary to
Oh, yes.
to salary that were hourly.
Right. I mean, that was, I'm just talking about when we talked about it a couple years ago. I remember that being discussed, and at that time, there was some kind of incentive, and the employees, and yeah, it wasn't a winter like this winter, of
Yeah.
course, and so everything was fine at that time.
Right.
Moving right along.
So our next one is report of our student representative. And first, Ainsley, I want to apologize, you didn't get our packet last month, so that's why she wasn't here. She's so good about being here. So we appreciate you having here and apologize that you didn't get that last month. so you must have some things about Winter Carnival to tell us.
Yes, Winter Carnival is this week, so SRB has been really busy organizing that. On Friday, that's the day where we don't have classes, and we just participate in activities, and each class competes to see who can win for certain points. So we're looking forward to that this week.
Are you snowshoeing, or what are you doing? Because
That is one of the events.
Is
We finally have enough snow this year to do that.
Yes. Oh, we have plenty.
Hopefully you don't have too much on Friday. We're supposed to get.
Yeah, we're supposed to get
I
married.
know.
Thank you. And our subcommittee reports, educational policy, Jack?
So, Gary shared with us previously some information about the next generation science standards being adopted by the Department of Education and aligning class offerings to new expectations. So, as you've already heard, we recommended adding the new courses and making some changes. And so we recommended bringing that to the full board as was discussed. Kim reviewed practices established for transgender students, and after reviewing a policy, which we looked at and came out of Connecticut, we determined that no new policy was actually needed for RSU 16 since we currently have a non-discrimination policy in place. The MPA has a separate policy for dealing with transgender students in athletics, and we'll follow those guidelines in the programs, and we will watch for any changes that are forthcoming on that. We discussed the use of email for outside groups. Tina updated us on the practices put in place by the A-team, and they're working well so far. She plans to meet with some of the constituents to get more input. And we moved further discussion on the strategic plan next steps to the February 23rd meeting because we ran out of time.
Okay, on facilities and transportation, Aaron?
Sure. Everybody has the notes and minutes attached. The projections for the enrollment, Kim discussed the fact that she had had a couple of meetings with a few different districts that have actually done the build-out and done the legwork, and she also met with the state representative who recommended that, you know, we scrap kind of what we were doing and go with this process first because it's going to be needed anyway. So what she presented to us is that we do an enrollment projection by a specialist who has the designation and the expertise in that. So we know if it is a long-term need or a short-term need, and versus a bubble feeling of what we might be just feeling for pressure. So the subcommittee agreed to go ahead and proceed with that study first, as that was the recommendation from the state. The advertising in school subject came up again. We have learned that, you know, some schools are wanting it, some schools currently have it, but the funds are going to different places. So we're kind of wrapping it all up and trying to figure out what currently is out there for policies in other districts, as well as what's happening in our district. And we are going to be bringing all that back to the board to move forward on any recommendations or policy changes that we need to make. But we're going to postpone that for a little bit since we have so many other things going on at this time. The transportation update we've already talked about with the additional mechanic going on. The emergency planning, we are going to have some mock planning drills coming up to make sure that everybody has gone through a dry run, including students and faculty and law enforcement, local law enforcement and fire and everything else, to make sure that if we were to experience any sort of emergency or a time when we need to evacuate a building, everybody is calm and understands what the protocol is, and we've gone through it once or twice before we actually need to do it in real life scenario, which I personally thought was excellent, and I loved the proactive thought. One of the additional topics that we came up with that is a topic that I brought up is that currently the two portables located outside the middle school are not locked. Most times out of the day they're not locked, and there's nothing to prevent somebody from the parking lot entering those two buildings. And the main entrance does have a lock on it that can be activated and deactivated, but it's currently it's very problematic for the teachers and administrators to be going over there every time it needs to be locked and opened and unlocked and things like that. So Gary is going to price out some fencing, enclosures, just something nice, decorative, not a chain link, barbed wire kind of deal, but something that looks respectable for our environment, so it'll keep the kids safe and keep the people in who need to be in and those out who need to be out. So once Gary has that, we'll bring it to the board. And then the facilities update went very well. A lot of nitpicky things that Gary brought up again to us. That happens every year to us. That we make the school classrooms a little bit cleaner, a little bit more organized. Egresses aren't blocked. We have stuff away from the sprinkler heads, and then they slowly creep back in as teachers get more settled into the year. And again, those are the same things that keep coming up. So. We ballparked some ideas, but Gary's going to be, he's already addressed all of the immediate concerns. I'm talking to all the teachers, but he's looking for some long-term kind of personality adjustments of how to teach a teacher to keep things off a windowsill, so that way we don't get dinged in the future, and it is a safety thing. So those are some of the things that we've been talking about.
Thank you. And Personnel and Finance, Mary Ellen.
We've already addressed most of them. We do have coming up on February 26th the full-day budget meeting where all of the principals will be presenting their budget proposals. And I don't know, Tina, if you've heard anything new on getting the word on the, was it 249s, whatever the...
279s.
279s.
They're,
Digit off.
yeah, we have received no communication about when to expect those yet. I have a Western Maine Superintendents Association meeting on Wednesday, and one of our members is on the state committee, so I'm hoping that in his report out from their latest meetings, they'll be able to give us some heads up about when those are coming out and if there's any information about when the assurance rates will come out.
So, and you were saying you made some mention before about, I was going to mention while we were talking about budget and personnel, that you were saying something about the additional paycheck, and that was for the retroactive pay, I believe, that was for the teacher's contract
Yeah.
that we put into effect.
Yes.
So.
Okay, thank you. And report.
Can I have a couple of questions. One is, so on the budget committee, we talked about February 26th. Has that, and you had some proposed dates. I wasn't here at the last meeting, so maybe I missed that, but were those finalized, those dates and times?
Yes.
Beyond that?
We had no concern raised to us about the February 26th, so that is gone forward as expected. And we had one request to move the regular evening meetings to 6:30 instead of 6, but because they're usually 2 hours long and it's a challenge to have us out too late, we decided that instead of changing it for one person, we're going to stick with 6 p.m. on those meetings.
So maybe send out again that, maybe
Yeah,
if that could be
got
posted
scheduled.
or sent out.
I thought we got mailed some. I got
Yes,
something in the mail.
I put them all in the mail.
Yeah.
Recently or?
Recently?
Yeah.
It was, I was, yeah. I
Yeah,
put
it was
all on my
beginning of
phone.
February. It was a while
Yeah.
ago.
It was a couple weeks ago.
Oh, a couple weeks.
So,
Okay.
I don't know if I got any.
So do-
I had requested it to be put on first class. I still hadn't seen it there. That was the only other.
the dates,
The dates, times, places,
Okay. Yeah,
that would
anything
be
on the
good.
first class one, so
Okay.
it's in our school board one.
yeah.
If Tina
I'll
did,
check.
there was also
Yeah.
a letter from.
Yeah, just something on a
Kim.
calendar. I didn't see anything on there yet.
Oh, okay, yeah.
There was also a letter from Kim dated January 20th, too.
So put budget committee dates on the calendar, and would you also like the document posted, or
It-
does it matter?
Yeah, whatever's convenient, but the dates, if they're not down there.
Okay,
My phone number leaves my side, but
yes, yeah. I'd gladly do that.
Is the 26th going to be, is it going to be here? Do we know where
We're
that's
gonna be at the
be?
fire station, because school will be in session.
Okay.
So the library will be being used by the students. And I'm still working on the whole, figuring out the microphones and the video cameras. I have a meeting with Donnie Hodgkins and Carrie and Linda, I think on Wednesday, to make sure that all of those things are done. And I hope this isn't a real challenge to figure out how to do the same things over
Right.
there, but we certainly can't do it here in this room with students needing to use the library.
And do you have a time for that 26th date? Do you know?
Yeah, I
Or
don't
you'll
have
just
it on
send the
this, I think it
schedule
was
anyway?
I think we said 8:30 to like 4, but I'll verify and I'll send a new update out to everybody.
Okay, that's
Can-
great.
This says 9 to 4:30.
Okay.
And I think we were talking about having like some coffee and muffins and things like there by 8:30 for anyone who is a few minutes early.
So the only other question I had too was with Aaron's report with the evacuation. They do that at the schools now, right? So
I
it's
think
different.
I think what they're talking about is like a mass evacuation.
So they're saying some sort of facility threat where the kids need to be evacuated off ground.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So they're actually going to be busing in to pick up kids, getting them out of here,
Okay.
and, yeah,
Okay,
doing that
great.
sort of thing. Yep.
Any other questions about reports?
I just had one question. Do I have confirmation of which board members on those committees? I know we had a few. Oh, I think I'm on.
budget one?
For the
Yes.
20
Have we confirmed who's officially on that committee?
We did, but I don't think I have it.
Okay, so I'll check back in the, might have been the meeting I missed.
Okay. Report of the school board chair. I took a look at our goals just to see where we were, make sure that we weren't losing track of things, and we're in pretty good shape. One that we do need to think about is we had one about developing a school board job description that included policies, current practices, shared expectations, and our timeline was April. So if we're going to actually have that done by April, we need to get going. And I guess it's where do we, I think it was in the goals itself, it was just assigned to either educational policy committee. And we just heard Jack say that we didn't get to the strategic plan discussion because we didn't get to it with the agenda. So I don't know whether we just give it to them to do when they can, or whether we try to form a small committee to take a look at it.
Sounds like the 22nd today.
Do you want to have the education policy committee look at it and get a sense of whether that's something they want to do or ask others?
We should probably get an idea of the scope of what needs to be done and then determine the timeframe for it to complete it.
And the other thing was we had talked about doing the community and staff survey earlier this year, which we've done a couple of times now, so that shouldn't be as difficult to develop because we want it pretty much aligned so we can compare answers from the other 2 years. So if we're going to do that earlier, we had talked about possibly trying to get that out April or May at the latest, so that we would get it back so we could do our goals in the summer rather than in the fall, because our goals tie to Tina's goals, and we'd like that whole process to happen earlier.
And we have our A-team retreat where we set our goals, I think, July 22nd and 23rd, somewhere right around there.
So we might want to put that on our next agenda too, just to establish a plan for getting that done. And at our next meeting, I'll probably ask who would like to be part of the superintendent's evaluation committee, because we'll need to get that going again. So that's in terms of our goals, where we are. This is the time of year when we kind of think about board vacancies and whether people are running again. So I just kind of wanted to review that for people. In Minot, we've already passed the date where somebody could submit an intention. And this year, Scott's term is up and Tina's is. So anybody that would have to go as a write-in because it's too late to get it on the ballot. So if you have people that, we're still trying to convince Tina that, that we're not going to let go. We understand Scott's got some obligations that are pretty hefty.
Not that Tina doesn't, but we're still trying because, yeah, she's hedging, so we're taking advantage.
Yes, but it would have to go in as a write-in, and their vote is on March 6th. And in Poland, their papers are due February 17th, and their vote is April 4th, and that's Scott, Melanie, and Grace's term. So.
And I checked this morning, and no one has taken out papers yet in Poland, so I think we need to check in with those folks and see what they're, if they are aware of those dates and check on their plans.
I think everyone's running, they're running the other way.
Julie?
I know that we had a conversation earlier about not sending papers home in the Wednesday folders, but this might be something that needs to go home in a Wednesday folder.
So I have contacted the principals and, well, particularly Minot. The others, I'm waiting. Once I find out if people aren't running, then we know who to, which seats to start canvassing the schools for. But I did talk to Kim Spencer from Minot and asked her to speak with teachers and community club and just find out who's involved in the school, involved in the education in general that might be interested in running in Minot. So they're working on that. Nobody has come to me with a list of names yet.
I have 3 people who have talked to me about it.
Excellent. So, yeah, so if you want
Start wooing them.
to share those, let me know, or, having conversations. And, the same thing, if we find out that Scott, Melanie, and/or Grace are not running, we can, again, be, encouraging people that have an interest in the school department and the progress that we're making. We would certainly encourage them to run, because it is kind of a thankless job, and to get people involved, I think, might take, little encouragement.
Silly question, but if nobody runs, what happens to us? Like, do we just sit with empty seats?
We can appoint.
They appoint.
Well,
Okay.
let me ask my question, then we'll go on.
Okay.
Okay, what happens if they get 3 write-ins at Minot town meeting and nobody accepts the write-ins? I know the answer, I think I know the answer. Then they'll go to the town meeting floor and see if they can get somebody to be nominated and get elected on town meeting, at town meeting
At
day.
the town meeting.
Okay.
But if that doesn't happen, then the selectmen appoint
Right.
school board members.
It wouldn't be empty seats.
Okay.
It's just,
Let's
as
hope not.
Steve says, I
Yeah.
think probably Steve is right in the
Okay.
Minot. And Mechanic Falls, Missy, have you got your papers yet?
I didn't even know
Jen?
that was up. I didn't even know.
I intend to
Good.
run again.
Good.
I haven't gone
So
over there
the
to do
date
that yet.
that
You guys have a
Lauren
while.
gave me was
I knew I had a while.
April 30th, and that June 9th is. So
I have to have
so
it in
there's
by
a little
April
bit of
30th?
time.
Okay.
Yes.
You have to have them in by April 30th.
Yeah.
Not next week, like,
Plenty of time.
It's been 3 years already.
Yeah, but I see people, a few years ago, the people in Minot took papers up for selectmen, forgot all about them, didn't turn them in.
Oh,
They got beat
oh.
right up.
And it is important. I think that we're heading in a good direction, and we've got some good momentum, and it's important that we have some consistency, and that we have people that are, are committed to it. So I certainly appreciate the people that we have here.
How many years do you have to run?
How many what?
Until they tell you to stay home?
Before it's automatic.
Are you asking when we're going to
Before
ask you to stay home? We're not going to,
Oh.
Steve, so.
Tenure on the board?
Yeah, tenure.
There we go.
You're not gonna fire me, jeez.
So I just wanted everybody to know where we are there, and certainly how important it is that we have a good, strong board that is committed to the direction that we're heading.
And we do need the 15 members.
Yes.
We really do.
Yeah.
I hate to see us sit here and not have anybody that really wants to serve and cut us down to like 9 or 12. I mean,
There's
bad
a lot
enough
of
now getting these committees filled.
So, report of the superintendent.
All right. I'm going to try to keep this short, because we got some executive sessions ahead of us. So, I've talked already that we had a meeting with the town managers. That was one of the items I wanted to share with you. We met on Friday, covered a bunch of topics, including where we are all headed with the budget, the snow. Everybody, of course, was talking about the snow plowing. We talked about the charter school bill. Brad Plant was asking how the school department felt about the changes in the proposed changes in funding, and we shared that that would be good for us, so he's going to, again, advocate for passage of that bill, so that was a good conversation. And I was really pleased, because at the end of it, they said, instead of waiting a quarter, we think we need to meet next month and keep each other really up to speed on what's happening with our budget process and other issues. So I think we're all finding it valuable, and sent out some notes this time Arlen missed, and he responded to the conversation in an email, so I felt like we've got some good momentum in that area.
I think it's a good exchange, and I think that certainly we benefit from the conversation, and I think they do. They gave us some good ideas about recycling and some other kinds of things that we were wondering about.
Some cost sharing ideas, was part of that conversation. And we've been meeting at central office and having pizza for lunch together, and John offered to have it at Mechanic Falls next time, and he's going to bring the pizza. So we're spreading our wings, and hopefully we'll have a little bit of opportunity to meet in each town eventually. So. I also wanted to give you an update about vaccinations. I know there have been conversations out there. I didn't know if you have had any concerns or heard parents having concerns about the vaccinations. So I got an update from Carol Brocker. We're doing quite well with our vaccination rates. She said that in 2006, the vaccination rate for measles was 92%. 2013, it dropped to 21%, and that was the state average. RSU 16's immunization rate is 97%. So most of our students are vaccinated, and the 3% counts for exemptions due to religious or philosophical reasons. She said there are some other students that can't have the vaccination because of medical problems, but basically we have a good number of students that are vaccinated. And I just wanted to give an update. Kim was going to give an update on the MEA, or Smarter Balanced test. The staff are working really hard to be prepared for that. So we've had pretty extensive training by all. Staff have to be trained if they're proctoring any portion of that test. So we have all our teachers and ed techs being trained, so they can, if they're, their makeup tests, we have staff prepared to do that. We used a good portion of our last workshop day, and then we will have several, quite a few workshop days going forward, making sure that, not workshop days, our early release days, where there's a little attention to that. Teachers are starting to become familiar with the practice test, so kids can feel comfortable with the technology and what they're going to need to know when they use the test. And I wanted to bring that up because I have heard that I know in Lewiston there was some conversation about whether parents are going to opt out of the test. So far, we have very few parents. We only know of 2 that have raised the question about opting out, and it's really important that our kids are tested. We want all our kids tested, even our special ed kids. We know it's a rigorous test, but it's a computer adaptive test, so if you get questions wrong, the questions get easier, and if you get them right, they get harder. And what this is going to do is it's going to give us really good information about how we're doing as a school department. So we're encouraging all parents to support the school department and allow their kids to be tested. And the other piece of this is if the state doesn't have 95% tested, or the school doesn't have 90% tested, that's a violation for No Child Left Behind. We've got to question what happens to us if that's the case. A school department like Lewiston, I don't know if they're going to have a lot of kids pull out. We don't feel like that will be a problem for us, but we wanted to share with all of you, in case anybody has questions, that it's really important that every child is tested. So we're encouraging that.
Are we not having problems like Lewiston? The teachers couldn't even, what the article in the paper said, they couldn't even do the tests.
With the iPads.
Yeah, with the iPads stuff. Are we not having those issues?
No. We did the pilot last year, and we did not have any problems with our technology. We weren't sure if maybe the Lewiston students were using the minis, or what the issue was. I know Linda Chasen has been working with our staff and has also contacted Lewiston, and I think there were some issues that she asked what their issues were so she could see if she could duplicate them. And I think there were some that she could duplicate, and they're working on making sure they're not issues for us. But we, at this point, are not concerned about our ability to do that. We've purchased a considerable number of keyboards because we want our kids to have keyboards. I know the state's not requiring that anymore, but we think if kids are asked to write, constructed response paragraphs or whatever, we want them to have a keyboard and make it easier for them to do so.
I just know since that Lewiston article, I have seen personally on Facebook, parents in our community talking about opting out and they didn't know they had the option. So I don't know if that will grow because of it, because I've seen quite a few people that are now talking about that because they're afraid.
So that's why I'm sharing it tonight, and hopefully to the thousands of people that are watching on TV. And we are going to get in front of this, and I'm going to put together a newsletter with some information about it. And so we're, again, we've got very supportive parents, and at this point, there hasn't been significant concern brought, but because it's happening in other communities, we want to make sure our parents are educated and understand the importance of the test, and also why it's valuable to us as a district to know and be able to identify the knowledge our students have. So teacher evaluation system, we had our workshop day on the trying to remember what the date was, not long ago, a week or two ago, and half of the day was on teacher evaluation, and we went through, Rick and I did a presentation for all the K-6 staff, and I think, we were at mine at Consolidated School, and Carrie did it for the 7 to 12. We prepared the presentations together so staff across the entire district would have the same message, the same PowerPoint, and would go through the same activities to make sure they understood what the expectations would be for the teacher evaluation system. It went very well. We had great feedback from staff that it was helpful and that they feel much more comfortable with the system going forward. So just wanted to share that we are doing well with that. We need to get our steering committee together shortly. I think we have a date set?
Yes, March 5th.
March 5th. Thank you, Mary. And I also wanted to report out that we are working on our support staff evaluation system. For those of you who are on the negotiations process, there is not really a side agreement, but an appendix letter that says we have to have a evaluation system in place for support staff by the beginning of next school year. So we are working on our ed tech this month, and then each month we've got labeled for a different group of the support staff, and we feel like we are on our way to have that done by July 1. And I had in here, we have 3 letters of intent to retire. That's just intent. That doesn't necessarily mean they will, but I wanted to give you a heads up on that. And then the last piece of information I have is some support staff new hires. We're very excited about that. We have Maurizio Massetti, who is a bus driver. As you all know, we've been shorthanded on our bus drivers. Chelsea Harrison, food service manager, Elm Street School. Derek Lacassi, music choral director for Poland Regional High School. Michael O'Leary, middle school softball. And Daniel Hunt, unified basketball coach.
Do we get told who the letters of intent are for?
I have no problem telling you, but because it's not definite, I just felt it was better to give you a heads up, because we don't want, if they,
Decide not to.
yeah, if they decide not to, we don't want parents alarmed because their teacher or the next year's teacher that they're hoping to get is going to retire. So that's why I kept it general. But if you want to know in private, I'd be glad to tell you.
And when do they need to give it in?
I don't think I think they can do it any time.
Okay.
We always hope that it's relatively early, like in April or May, so we have plenty of time to hire when the season is ripe for hiring. But I don't think they can't retire in August. That's the only contractual language. They can retire any time up until then.
But we have had teachers in the past that have thought, well, maybe I will,
Yeah,
and they're maybe for 5 years, so.
Because they have to file the intent, right?
Right, by a certain date.
31st. Yeah, by the 31st of January, they have to file, and by doing that, they can get up to, trying to remember, is it 30 days of their sick leave paid out at $100 a day or something like that. So there's a benefit to them to, if they don't notify us and they decide to retire, they don't get that payout.
Okay.
Yeah, I know years ago, they had the intent way early. If they didn't, there was some big, amounted to quite a penalty.
Yeah. Well, it used to be per diem. Now it's $100, so it's significantly less than it used to be, and that's exactly right. If you had 30 days at per diem, it could be $8,000 or $9,000.
The music choral director, did we lose somebody? Because I thought both of those, the middle school and the high school, both had a choral director.
Good question. I don't know that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think in the last month's packet, there was a resignation.
I must have missed that one, because I was,
Yeah.
because I was just
Yes,
there.
I actually have that information. Let me look.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
Doesn't
So, yes, if the new, it's, yeah, so Vicky Stubbs.
Okay, so that's not a teacher, that is for performances.
Right.
It's the musical,
Right.
Okay.
Like,
like the play.
Okay.
And the only other thing was, since the administrators weren't here, was there any questions on the A-team report that Tina could address for us? I would say thank you to Jenny for doing that everyday math workshop for parents. Did you have not a lot of attendance? It's too bad, because it's something that I would think would be very helpful for parents.
Well, we canceled the first one because we only had, I think, 2 people signed up, but encouraged them to, we tweaked the second one, which is happening this Wednesday, and we have, I think, 5 coming. So, yes.
Well, thank you for offering it, because
Yes.
I know that sometimes is a struggle for parents.
Yes. We've asked her to adjust this next one to sort of incorporate all of the grades, but then, some of her specifics that she had planned, so, yes.
Thank
it's
you.
happening.
Okay, so I also want to thank Allison Emery for, she's running our camera, so thank you. I think this is the end of your part of it.